J.D. Hayworth back with you now on America's Forum. Be forewarned, we have video, despite a freeze frame, it is fairly graphic. You may have seen it earlier during Miranda's news update, as a white police officer in North Charleston, South Carolina, has been charged with murder after taking the life of a black man. Dramatic video here showed the man running with his back turned to the officer before the officer shoots him in the back multiple times, as you see in that video. Joining us now to talk about the story via telephone, Harvard Law professor Alan Dershowitz, author of the book Terror Tunnels, and coming to us via transatlantic line, or maybe now it's satellite. He's in Europe this morning. Tom Ruskin is on the phone. The former New York Police Department detective and security expert is phoning in from Paris, France. Gentlemen, we thank you for your time. I want you to listen to the family's attorney on the difference between the initial report and what the video showed.
What if there was no witness, or hero as I call him, to come forward?
Thank you, Lord.
Then this wouldn't have happened. Because as you can see, the initial reports stated something totally different. The officer said that Mr. Scott attacked him and pulled his taser and tried to use it on him. But somebody was watching.
And this renews the talk of every officer being equipped with a camera to monitor what goes on. Tom Ruskin, in your mind, should we have video on literally on every person with a gun and a badge?
I have said repeatedly, and I've even said to you, J.D. and Miranda, that I do believe that police officers should wear cameras and should have it activated when they get in any kind of confrontation. Something like this may eliminate something like this or this type of incident from happening, and if it does happen, it'll tell the story quite quickly to the police officials and the people who have to investigate this shooting.
Alan Dershowitz, you've done some commentary for Newsmax TV, you and the law, on the use of video with law enforcement. I don't know what the legalities are in South Carolina, but the third set of eyes, if you will, or the unblinking eye of the video camera dramatically changed this situation in North Charleston, did it not?
No doubt about that. I mean, this policeman wanted to cover up what he had done. I think he realized that he had done something terrible, and that's why he moved, apparently, the taser so that people would think that the taser was with the person who was killed. Tragically, bad cops, and most cops are good cops, the vast majority of the cops I've worked with are honorable and honest people, but there are some bad cops who carry with them Saturday night specials, and if they make a bad shooting, they will drop the gun next to the defendant or put his hand around it and claim that he was shooting at them. This wasn't as extreme as that, but just moving the taser, if that's what the tape really shows, really does show a cover-up. And without the tape, we wouldn't know about that, and the policeman would probably have been able to say, well, he had the taser in his hand, he was turning toward me, and I shot him 8 times. So I think the videotape makes all the difference in the world. What the videotape doesn't show us is whether this was racially motivated. And you can't conclude that based on what we now know. We know that African Americans are stopped selectively for minor violations, particularly when they're driving nice cars like this guy was driving. But whether or not the rest of the unfolding event was an instance of a bad policeman showing his power because he had been dissed or had been attacked, or whether it was racially motivated, that we'll never know from the videotape.
And speaking of racial tensions and what the future may hold for this municipality, let's listen to the mayor of North Charleston, South Carolina. His name is Keith Summey. Here's what Mayor Summey has to say about the letter of the law.
When you're wrong, you're wrong. And if you make a bad decision, don't care if you're behind the shield or just a citizen on the street, you have to live by that decision.
Tom, it sounds as if the mayor is ready to take decisive action. We heard Alan talk about the challenge of just one bad cop. Given your background with the NYPD, how do you weed out bad cops?
Well, that's why you have internal affairs units, and that's why you even have cops who know that a cop is not a good cop, calling internal affairs and giving them up. That's the way you weed them out. It's also part of the selection process. when you're selecting your candidates, I think the standards have to go up. And I think that our society is requiring an officer with much more of an education, much more skills, with a clean background. And it's the only way that you're going to be able to properly patrol the streets. And then, you have to racially diversify your police department based on the makeup of your city. New York City and other cities have been very good at doing that. Other cities have to take their lead and have to racially diversify. We don't know what happened prior to the videotape going on, but this shooting does not look good to me. And the fact that the guy is running away and an officer shoots him repeatedly in the back, there's very little justification without exigent circumstance. The guy had a bomb on him or something like that, but that's not the case in this case.
Right, I agree. I agree completely.
Well, mindful of that, Alan, is there ever a situation where video, as dramatic as it can be, and I'm not suggesting in this case, but are there situations where the video offers a story that is really out of context with the true narrative of what goes on?
Oh, there's no question about that. I'm aware of a case in Florida where a sleazy lawyer, a prosecutor, actually worked with some bad cops to change a video and create a false context. And they were sued for it, and the court unfortunately found that there was prosecutorial immunity and didn't resolve the issue. But videotapes can be tampered with, they can be cut, they can be started at a certain point and ended at a certain point. And yeah, that's a real problem. Also, when you turn on the video and don't, I've had cases where a confession was videotaped, but what wasn't videotaped was what led up to the confession. So videotape is not a panacea. It won't solve all the problems, but it certainly gives us an eye on a situation that we didn't previously have. And, I think the important thing is citizens with videotapes now are changing the world, for better or worse, but they're changing the world. And I teach my students, don't do anything that you don't want to have videotaped, because you have to assume your life is videotaped. And if this policeman had realized that, maybe he wouldn't have acted the way he did.
Well, on that note, mindful of the important role of video in this particular endeavor here on Newsmax TV, gentlemen, we thank you for checking with us via telephone to offer your insights on this very disturbing case out of North Charleston, South Carolina. Tom Ruskin via phone from Paris, France. Alan Dershowitz on the line from New York. Our thanks, and America's Forum continues right after this Newsmax Now update.